Alright, so we're going to need, of course, our big breaker bar and socket to pull off the wheel, the rear wheel. We're going to need these little clamps to pull the little strainer basket out of the master brake cylinder reservoir. Flashlight so you can see what the heck you're doing, of course. You're going to need some brake fluid. Okay, get yourself two. I would probably get yourself two of these guys. So about 1 liter of brake fluid. I've got a little bit left of this and a little tiny bit left of that. I put dates on them when I opened them last. You can mix these two together. It's not a big deal. You're going to need one of these bleeder bottles to capture the brake or the clutch fluid, brake fluid. You're going to need one of these power bleeders. I use this guy. In this situation, it's going to be best to do it wet. Do it wet, so that means that you'd be actually filling this reservoir up with some brake fluid, some fresh brake fluid, and it's going to pump that into the brake fluid reservoir and keep it filled up. Doing the dry method would be just kind of pressurizing. You're just using air in here and pressurizing the system. We're going to do it wet on this particular application because I'm not sure how long it's going to take to bleed the clutch line, and you can't really, I don't really want to be uncapping and uncapping, so I'm just going to fill this up. I'll show you what that all means. Here is a slave cylinder. This is the slave cylinder that's on the car, and this is what you are actually bleeding here. This is mounted to the top of the transmission. You're pulling this guy off, this little cap off, and this is the bleed nipple that you're going to be attaching some tubing to, and unscrewing this piece right here, just a couple turns, few turns, to allow the clutch fluid to come out of it. So this is what's buried in the on top of the transmission that you're trying to access. There's actually a hard line that's connected to this as well. There's a little cap on this right now, but this is the bleed screw that you're trying to access and get the tubing on there, unscrewing this a few turns, and allowing the clutch fluid to bleed out and the air bubbles to bleed out. That's the whole point of this exercise. Now, this is a flare nut fitting, looks like, and that's an 11 millimeter. So what I'm using is this 11 millimeter flex wrench. It fits right on there like that. Okay. Now, one thing to keep in mind is this whole unit here. I don't know if you can make a sense of it here on the, or see that it's plastic, but it is in fact plastic. This entire piece is plastic, including this bleed screw. That bleed screw does not look like it's plastic when you're underneath the car trying to get it unscrewed, but I assure you it is plastic. So extremely easy to round this thing off if you're not using a tool and applying the proper torque, the proper angle to unscrew it and to tighten it back up. I unfortunately, when I first bled my clutch, I rounded this off enough to where I can't get it off now. So I bought another one, so I'm going to rob this bleed screw off of this guy, put it on my slave cylinder, because taking this whole thing off, you have to remove a transmission mount and stuff, and I don't really want to have to deal with that, so I'm just going to steal the bleed screw. I'll show you where to buy this guy as well. You buy them through Porsche, they're like 130 bucks, but there's a company I bought it from, 50 bucks, through Saks. It's a Saks part. It's you know, Porsche uses Saks, so you know, save yourself 80 bucks and just buy it through an online retailer instead of buying it straight through Porsche. It's the exact same part number stamped on both of them. I verified that myself actually at the dealership. So I had one order at the dealership, and I brought this one in that I had bought online. Same part number printed on it. Anyways, so that's the slave cylinder that you're going to be bleeding the clutch fluid out of. Use this a little 11 millimeter. This is a gear wrench. I got this on Amazon. Bought the set. I don't know how much it was. It was like maybe 20 bucks or something. But I use this guy right here. I'll show you when I get underneath the car. But I use this. It's important that it's got a flex head on it. You could probably use a crow's foot wrench as well. But I use this to get some torque on it. And then I actually use this like little 3/8 inch shorty stubby extension and kind of put that on the end of it like that. So I kind of create myself like a little wrench here, and then I can, you know, a little bit of torque on it. and it gives me just the right clearance that I need. It's a little tight underneath there. So this is the little tool that I've concocted that should allow me to untighten that and tighten that back up. And when you tighten this thing, it's only 3.5 foot-pounds of torque. It's just like snug, like barely snug. There's a gasket down in there that'll seal it. Okay, it's not like you got a He-Man type that thing at all. You'll make a mess of it. You'll probably ruin it. So a little bit of tubing here, 1/4 inch inside diameter tubing, fits perfectly over that little nipple there. So 1/4 inch inside diameter, outside diameter is 3/8 inch. Home Depot, it's like $5 for 10 feet of it. And I think that's about it. And your torque wrench, of course, for retorquing down your lug nuts after it's all said and done. Okay, so let's get started on this. I'm going to jack up the car here. You're going to actually use the front jack point right there. Front jack point's going to be, you'll be able to jack up the car high enough using just the front jack point to get the whole side of the car lifted up. And then you'll stick a jack underneath the rear jack point and work on the car with the just the rear jack underneath there. You can leave the front jack raised up as well, but most of the weight's going to be on the rear jack stand that you'll put there. I'm sorry, you're going to put a jack back there, a jack stand. So yeah, I'm going to get this car lifted up and okay guys, so I've got the car, clearly I got it jacked up here in that front jack, and you can get the whole side of the car jacked up pretty high. I'm just going to have to get this rear one underneath. We got it secured, the pin. And then what I also do is I stick another jack underneath there, not underneath the jack point, but just in case the front jack fails. I mean, the front jack fails, the rear jack stand is going to take care of things, but just in case, better safe than sorry. Just stick another jack underneath here anywhere. Better to damage the underside of your car in case something fails and something crazy happens, then you get crushed, right? Just lower that down. Just take the little bit of pressure off there. So this guy's movable, but it's snug. And we're ready to pull this wheel off here. See that little coiled up thing back there? This is the axle right here that I'm shining a light on right there. Axle transmission. Right up there is a coiled. Okay, so that is the slave cylinder way back there. So this coiled mess goes to your slave cylinder in the back. This is your shift linkage right here. It's shift linkage. And way back beyond this shift linkage is the slave cylinder. So it's buried on top of the transmission. You can access it a little bit easier. So if you try to go straight in and see it from there, it seems kind of daunting actually. It's like a lot of stuff in your way. If you come back around over here though, from the back side, here, you can kind of see the lead nipple right up there. The light's shining on it right now. It's a little bit easier to access. You can see all these hard lines are in the way. It's just, how do you get a wrench back there, right? That's the reason why I created that flex head wrench with the little arm on it. So, anyhow, I'm trying to stick this light up here. Hopefully, you can see what I'm going for. So I'm going for that cap right there. for that bleed nipple. That's the bleed nipple that got rounded. So I'm gonna extract that out first, put the new bleed nipple in, and then we'll start up from there from scratch. Like I didn't really extract it, but yeah. Anyways, so I'll do that. I'll do that right now with my extractor bit. Pull it out and pop it in, and then we'll start the bleeding process. Alright, so I kind of want to give you another vantage point where that bleed nipple is. I got the flashlight shining right on it there. Back there beyond these shift linkages, hard line that hooks up to the slave cylinder, and then there's our bleed nipple right there. So you see, you can reach it. Your hands. So anyways, that's where it's at, and I kind of came down through the backside. Here's the muffler and this transmission pan, rear sway bar. So you can kind of access it through this direction. This is where you can kind of see it. You can actually reach your hand through this side, but you're kind of looking from back over here. If that makes sense. So this is my bleeder bottle, and then my 1/4 inch inside diameter hose, and exactly 2 feet of length. It's actually just about perfect. It'll reach the bleed nipple, and the bleeder bottle will sit on the floor, on the ground. So about 24 inches is about almost exact. It was just about the perfect length. So hopefully that little tidbit helps you out. It's not too short, not too long. Next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to hook up the power bleeder to the reservoir. So we'll pull this guy off. That's my trickle charger thing there. So I had it at max. Well, this car is all tilted right now, but it didn't look like it went below minimum. It certainly felt like quite a bit of liquid brake fluid came out of that bleed nipple. So we're going to need to pull this little basket out of here in order to connect the power bleeder cap to it. So typically what I use is these guys just to get just enough to pop it loose. Shop rags. Disorganized here, sorry guys. Oh, there they are. There. There. So what you got to do is we need to pressurize this reservoir up to, I believe it's 19 psi. No, I don't believe. I know it's 19 psi because I've read it. That's per Porsche. 19 psi. So I think when you're bleeding brakes as well, it should be at that pressure. So we'll pressurize it with the power bleeder, pump it up to 19 psi, and then we'll connect our bleeder hose and bleeder bottle to the bleed nipple, and then we'll crack that bleed nipple open, and then there is a sequence after that on pumping the clutch fluid through it using the clutch pedal. So you still need to depress the clutch pedal as well, and you need to do it by hand. You have to do a controlled movement forward by hand with the clutch pedal. If you just try to do it by foot, if you sit in the car and you try to do it by foot, the clutch pedal will want to spring forward. It just violently spring forward. As soon as you touch it, it'll just want to pop forward. So you have to control movement by hand. Keep your hand on it and don't let it slam to the floor. If you let it slam to the floor, you can cause damage. So just a little heads up on all that stuff and things that we're going to be going through. So we're going to connect that there, power this thing up to 19 psi, pressurize at 19 psi, and connect the bottle to the nipple and go from there. So yeah. All right, I got my power bleeder all pumped up to well, it's 15, so I need to pump it up a little more. I must have a little leak on it. I'm gonna pump this up to 19. It's running it wet, so I filled this bottle up to about there in brake fluid. There's about 1.5 pints. So, you know, you could probably put a full liter in here if you wanted to. I topped this off first, my reservoir, and then connected it after I'd filled this bottle up here. So yeah, about a liter probably total between topping that off and then filling up the rest of it here in the power bleeder is probably what you need. And then to get all the air out of the line, sometimes you have to hold this, pump it up, hold it up kind of high, and then unscrew the cap slowly, let the air kind of bleed out, and then repump it up a couple times, and doing the same thing, letting the air kind of rise up, unscrew the cap, and then you can get fluid all the way through the lines there. I don't think it's critical to do that because as long as it's pressurized, it's going to push fluid through in there, and as long as your reservoir doesn't get below the minimum level, it's not going to introduce any air into the system. But my OCD just wanted me to fill these lines up, so I did. So that was how I did that. Now we're going to use this tool here. We're going to hook the bottle up to the bleed nipple, and we're going to use this little tool to crack it open. I just kind of hand tightened in the new one that I put in because I had screwed this one up, but hopefully this is not your situation. You're just going to be unscrewing it for the first time. So I'll show you how to do it with these two tools. And yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and put this bottle over the bleed nipple. I'm going to set up the camera so hopefully you can see what I'm doing underneath here, and show you how I unscrew it, and then we'll hopefully start the bleeding process. Okay, so now I've got the line hooked up to it, and I've got the flare nut wrench over it, and I'm going to try to use my little to open this thing up. Come on, baby. Porsche does say you have to open it. There it goes. You have to unscrew it several times. There it goes. Oops. I don't really need that now because this thing is turning pretty freely. There it goes. Okay, so you're supposed to let that thing bleed for like 60 seconds, it says, until you don't see any air bubbles coming out of it. Actually, I don't see any air bubbles coming out of it at all right now. It's filling up a bit. Pretty good. I'm surprised. Okay. Come back over here. I want to pressurize this. Say 19 psi. See how it's doing? There's a lot of fluid going through there. Alright, so now we're going to pump this brake pedal. We do one pump slowly, and you hold it with your hand. Otherwise it's going to want to pop down. It wants to pop down right there. So you guide it by hand slowly. I'm actually having to hold it from forcing itself to the ground right now. It's wanting to pull itself forward pretty bad right now. So that's what you don't want it to do, is to slam it forward. Okay. Okay. Now we pump it. Pull it forward. Guide it slowly again. Again, I'm holding it from slamming to the floor right now. And again. Again, for good measure. Oh shit, my bottle's full. Well, sorry about that little snafu there. I had to make quick work of closing that bleeder valve, so sorry I didn't get that on camera for you guys, since the bottle was clearly overflowing there. Clean it up, close the bleeder valve real quick. When you got the wrench right on it, so you tighten it down real fast, and the fluid stops flowing. You can see here that the power bleeder did a pretty good job of doing what it was supposed to do. So all the fluid ran out of it. You can see there's a little bit of air in the lines, but it's still well above the max here. It's actually about right where I had started. So I went through about, a pint and a half there, which is probably about what this holds. So I flushed all that brake fluid through the lines. Clearly no more air was coming out of there towards the end. What I'm going to do now is unscrew this stuff and then put the cap back on it. Actuate the clutch pedal, make sure it feels correct. And then I'm going to go through and just actually bleed all the brakes as well. So you never know if fluid or air might get into the lines elsewhere. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I've done a video on how to bleed the brakes, so if you want to know how to do that, you can check out that other video I have on my page. But that's pretty much it as far as bleeding the brakes go. Hopefully some of those tips helped you out with the tools and what not to do when you do this. Well, clearly you can see, you pump that thing up to 15 psi, that fluid flows through pretty quick. So keep an eye on this. I'm by myself, so I only have one set of eyes on what I'm doing here. Just be aware of that. That could clearly be a problem. The fluid can fill up your bottle pretty fast. So if you've got a larger bottle for doing this job, that might be a good plan, is to get something a little bit larger so you don't have this concern of where you've got a puddle of brake fluid where you need to have your head resting to get down there. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect this like I said and actuate the clutch pedal, make sure it feels good, and you should clearly do the same, make sure it feels normal and stiff, and you should pat yourself on the back for a job well done on that. If you have any questions, you can of course just comment on the video or call me a retard, whatever you want to do. I don't know, it's kind of embarrassing there, but it is what it is. Things like that happen sometimes. So anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope this helped you out a bit, and have a good one. Happy track days.